Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast area of Scotland, in the United Kingdom. And of course, Scotland is the capital of literally, and I mean literally everything. So there we go. The guitar has no sound. Yes, it's not meant to. By the way, what you may have noticed is at the start of my shows, before we actually start playing the theme tune music, there is a video that plays at the start, and it deliberately has no audio. It's just a video loop of about, I don't know, 10-15 seconds long. And that's all it is. I thought it was better than just static images, but you guys maybe don't seem to like it necessarily. Kyle says, YouTube sucks. The video never started for me. Well, it's funny you should say that. There's nothing wrong in OBS, but it does seem that we lost signal going to YouTube for a second there. Which was annoying because that's like right when we started. So, so I don't know what happened there, but it would appear that we had for a short period no signal. I don't know why. Ron likes the video. That's cool. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Yeah, I thought I'd try and just improve things a wee bit. So I made a couple of videos that could be just used silently to kind of start the show with, because I just thought they're just a wee bit better than a static image. But yeah, I thought it was a nice improvement to make to how I present my shows. So there are more improvements coming to how I make videos for this channel, and improvements to the live streaming experience. So I am working on that. Yes, I'm working on investing a wee bit in some more equipment and stuff to kind of improve how these streams work going forward this year, and especially on into next year. So yeah, that's kind of the plan going forward. And so things like the wee videos for the start of my live streams was kind of part of that improvement plan. Okay, you guys are messaging me like crazy. So I can fix that. There we go. All right, so let's go see who is here. Billy Morgan was first in the door, getting his rightful place at the start like he has done for a long time. Followed by Stephen Wilson and Ron Figura and Tony Cardona and Daniel Shua. Hello, mate. Good to see you. I don't know why I waved like that, but anyway, you got the dual hands wave there. And we've got the anonymous housewife, and we've got Kyle and Don Oliver and Bobby Booth, and we've got Rich from Studio One Tuts is here as well, which is awesome. So welcome everybody. I hope everybody... Oh, we got Rich as well. So we got both of Rich's personalities here. So awesome. That's kind of double the talent in the room. I like that. So anyway, so we've got like 14 or 15 people here, which is cool. So tonight, I thought we'd talk a little bit about... I mean, Ron kind of anticipated a little bit of what I wanted to talk about, which is using music to convey, not necessarily an emotion, but to convey a certain sense of action, which is like great if you are into making film music, or you are writing music for games. And I know Rich is very definitely into writing music for games. So musical moods, or trying to invoke a particular scene is kind of what I wanted to talk about a wee bit. So Ron was talking about, how do we write music that is frantic? What kind of are the key ingredients? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to unsettle your listener for a start. And you want there to be a lot of forward motion, a lot of, kind of propulsion to the music. So you can drive it very much rhythmically with percussion and with drums and things like that. And so I would say those are probably definitely very key ingredients. So maybe a high tempo and a lot of forward motion. So you can achieve that with things like ostinato. A good example of ostinato would be the Duel of the Fates from the Star Wars Phantom of the Menace, I think it is. The Phantom Menace, rather. And there's that, which provides a real sense of urgency. And then you have the choir singing those long tones as kind of a contrast between the frenetic kind of driving, almost rock-like rhythms of the strings playing that, which then gets taken over by the brass, and then you have the other counter melody that kind of goes with that. So stuff like that, a driving sense of forward motion with rhythm and with an ostinato really helps as well. Also, when I said in the chat there about odd groupings and notes, I actually meant rhythmical odd groupings of notes, not just kind of groupings of pitches, but I mean, yes, certainly odd groupings of pitches will definitely help you, but also odd groupings of notes. So rather than 16th notes or 8th notes, which are nice and even and symmetrical, make things a little off-center, a little less symmetrical. So maybe something like quintuplets or septuplets, 5 in the time of 4, 7 in the time of 4, things like that, or 9 in the time of 4. Kind of rhythms like that are off-center, off-kilter. And, the theme tune, by the way, for this show is called Off Kilter. Why? Because pretty much nothing is on the beat. Apart from occasionally the snare drum is on the beat. But other than that, everything else is pretty much off the beat. So it's hard to discern where the pulse is. And so things like syncopation and off-kilter rhythms will definitely help get you there. The second thing is you also want to have a sense of urgency. So if you want the music to be frantic, you need a sense of urgency to undergird that and support that. So you can use a minor tonality, and you can also use diminished chords, which are basically stacks of minor thirds. So, diminished chords are probably amongst the most unsettling sounds. And then finally, to get to kind of rhythm, I would suggest, we've dealt with rhythm, to get to melody. Talked a bit about odd groupings of notes in terms of rhythm, but how about odd groupings of pitches as well? So taking pitches that don't belong to the tonality of everything else can also give a sense of it being frantic, and your melody needs to be, fast-paced. So it could be that your tempo is, and you've got driving 8th notes in the low strings or something like that, because you kind of want almost like a rock-like thing going on. And then you can have offbeat 16th notes on another instrument, maybe a percussion instrument, to juxtapose those straight 8th notes. And then your melody could be made up of like groups of 7 16th notes, or groups of 7 32nd notes, something like that, that's like a lot faster than everything else. And then the pitches. The pitches can be almost atonal if you want to. You can play little tonal games where you develop maybe a tone row. I think I've talked about tone rows before. And tone rows are very, very cool. They're they're fun to construct. They're not as easy to construct as you think, because basically you have to avoid tonal relationships between one pitch in your row and the next one. So you can't have like normal tonal relationships like major thirds, minor thirds, or anything like that. So you have to deliberately make sure that one note, maybe note number 1 of your 12-note row, and then is maybe, let's just say it's a G. And then the next one after that cannot have any tonal relationship to that G whatsoever. So you're going to have to think hard about what the second note is. And the idea is you use all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, but not in the correct order, because you are trying to avoid tonal relationships. And then you build your melody. So those groups of 7s and 9s and whatever can use notes from that row. And then to make things even more interesting, you can set yourself like arbitrary rules. For example, to make your melody from those 12 notes, when you play a note, you're not allowed to play that note again until you've played another note, or until you've played the entire tone row before you get back to that note. And then you can do things like playing that forwards, playing it backwards, playing it upside down and backwards, and things like that to give you variations. So all of those kind of come from, kind of mid to late, maybe, middle 20th century kind of classical compositions by people like Webern and Berg and Schoenberg, and people like that from that kind of German, Austrian school of contemporary classical music composition, where they deliberately threw away a lot of tonal conventions, turned them on their heads, and did something completely different that nobody had ever heard before, particularly Schoenberg. So those are kind of things that you can use even if you're not in a classical context, even if you're in a contemporary progressive rock context. You can certainly borrow those kind of techniques and juxtapose them into the style of music that you're working in. It's not necessarily going to work for country music though. So what do you do if you're in a country music genre and you still want to do this kind of sense of frantic forward motion? The simple answer here, get that Nashville train beat going and pump up the tempo to at least 280, if not 300 and above beats per minute. Get that Nashville train going. And, get everybody playing just as fast as possible. And then again, that melody line needs to be nice and busy over the top of what you've got going on. And that will definitely, and, in that context, you can use triplets, quarter note triplets, but you can also use quintuplets and stuff like that. Those will be fun playing at 300 beats a minute, trust me. But stuff like that, Ron, I think will help you get that sense of frantic nature. And you can do that without necessarily making the music angry, because you might want to be frantic because maybe the scene is the person is frantically late. Maybe they're frantic because they're late and they're going to miss their bus. So they're not going to be angry. They're just going to be anxious about being late. So it's an anxious franticness, which is not the same as being frantically furious and angry. So the music doesn't necessarily need to be angry. So I hope that kind of answers that question. It's a really good one. Secret Squirrel is asking both me and Rich, is it possible to add multiple audio events into Melodyne to edit them against one another within Melodyne when using ARA2? With the bare bones basic version of Melodyne, which is Melodyne Essential, I do not believe that is possible. However, it is possible with higher versions, higher editions of Melodyne, I'm pretty sure. But, I only have Melodyne Essential. I'm not really an expert in Melodyne. I only use it for doing a little bit of a little bit of pitch correction. For horses galloping, think the William Tell overture. Yeah, William Tell overture is brilliant. Although the problem with the William Tell overture, it's really, really good, but those rhythms are really, really straight and on the beat. So yes, you know, there is that sense of forward motion because you get that. So there's kind of the galloping bit is having the 2/16 notes and then the 8th notes. That's kind of where that sense of forward motion is. And the accent being on the 8th note after the 2/16 notes rather than how most people play it, which is da 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 da. It's not that. It's da 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 da. So the accent is on the upbeat 8th note rather than the downbeat 16th note. And that's what gives the William Tell overture its sense of forward motion and that kind of idea of horses, because it's a little bit off kilter. Yo. There's Super Scroll. I think I just kind of answered your question, at least a little bit. Let's see. Okay. All right. So another thing I kind of had thoughts about that we could talk about, because we talk about harmony and chords and stuff quite a bit here, because, you know, harmony and chords are kind of a bit of a passion of mine. I love chords. I love making chords of all types for all kinds of music. Whether that's orchestral music or whether it's big band music or whether it's brass band music or whether it's jazz. I love harmony and I love chords and choral music as well. I have written choral works as well. So kind of what I was thinking about was a nice little melodic device. Now this idea was inspired by one of the short videos produced by the YouTube channel Open Studio Jazz. They are really, really good. Not just because they're jazz, but because they come up with some really, really cool and interesting ideas for just creating music in general. And so one of their ideas or the concept of this particular video was to borrow chords from another key other than the key that you're in. So in this particular case, they were talking about borrowing from a key center that is a major third below the key that they're in. So if you're in the key of C major, that would make it A flat. So for example, you could do things like, instead of doing a 2-5-1 in C, you could do a 2-5-1 in A flat, but the tonic is still C. Okay, so we keep the tonic, but we borrow chord 2 and chord 5 from A flat major, and we then resolve that back to the tonic of C major. So let's try a couple of these examples and see if you guys like them, and maybe you could add this to your arsenal of musical harmonic devices for either resolving something or changing key, because this will work if you want to change key as well. So let's try this. So let's go. So here's our C major, and let's try doing a 2-5-1 in C major. So that would be D minor, G7, C. I'm just checking my audio levels. Come up just a smidge. Alright, so that's a 2-5-1 in C major. So what I'm suggesting we do is we take chord 2 and chord 5 from A flat major, but still resolve on C. So what is chord 2 in A flat? So here's the A flat major scale. Okay, so there's 1. So chord 2 is going to be B flat minor. And then 5 is going to be E flat. So we're going to go. Okay, now that kind of sounds a little bit weird if I just use the root notes in the bass. So kind of doesn't really work. So here's what we're going to do. When we get to that chord 5, which is the E flat, instead of playing the E flat in the bass, we're going to put the 3rd in the bass. Why? Because G7 has the same note, all right, at its root. So that should help give us that dominant back to tonic kind of sense. So now that definitely works a lot better. Whoops. That was going to be a nice little descending melody line, and I fudged it up. So how could we kind of then extend that idea, seeing we're doing 2-5-1? How about, well, let's think. Could we do a 3-6-2-5-1? Well, chord 3 is already C minor, so maybe not. But we could certainly do, certainly do 6-2-5-1. But resolving back in C. So now, if we insert that chord, we get F minor, so we get that kind of, I've described this as kind of the most melancholic sound in music. I've described this before, where you get essentially in the key of C major, chord 1 to chord 4 minor. Saddest sound in music. I take out all the extensions. Which, by the way, you get in Star Wars for Luke's theme, because Luke's character is very melancholic. It's actually, you know, his character is actually quite sad because of all the things that he not only has been through, but is about to go through. You know, the whole thing of discovering that Darth Vader is your dad, and then having to fight your dad and almost kill your dad, and then I'm not going to spoil it too much more. But so that's why his character is a little bit melancholic, and of course he never grew up knowing who his sister was for a start, but he does end up with a relationship with his sister, which is nice. So that chord 1 to chord 4 minor thing is kind of a byproduct of what we're doing here. So we're borrowing F minor, B flat minor, and E flat 7 with the 3rd in the bass to get us back to chord 1. So that, and it also kind of provides a nice little bit of voice leading as well. So experiment with some of these ideas. So that's doing kind of doing a modified 3-6-2-5-1 in A flat, but resolving in C. So there are other ones that you can try. We could take let's think about this. So we could go we could maybe walk down. Do something like that, but this time everything has to be from the key of A flat, and that's a little bit tricky, but they did that in the Open Studio Jazz video, which I recommend you definitely go watch. It's only about 30 seconds long, but it's highly instructive and useful. And there are other different chord types, sets of chord changes that you can try, borrowing from A flat and resolving on C. So you can definitely do that. There's also, you can take that idea and you can extend that idea and go, okay, so that's borrowing from a key center that's, a third below. How about from a third above? So if we're going to do a 2-5-1 in E flat, that would give us, but we want to we want to be in the key of C major, right? So chord 2, that's actually a backdoor 2-5-1 already. And you could substitute out that F minor for A flat and get a proper, Neapolitan, actually. So you could do like a proper Neapolitan backdoor 2-5-1, which is with flat 6, A flat, B flat, to C major. And those kind of are all coming from the key of E flat, doing 4-5-1, but instead of going to 1, which would be E flat, you're going to C. C is your 1. So, and this is something that I do frequently, actually, without, even if the people I'm working with are not doing that, I will imply it with improvisation. I will actually borrow those chords in my improvisation, in my melody improvisation, and suggest those other chords, even if they're just playing conventional 2-5-1. I'll play a backdoor, and the A flat to B flat to C instead of D minor G7 C. I will use the notes of the A flat, the B flat, and the C, and that just provides an extra little layer of tension. So you can do that. Even if you're not improvising, you can do that with melody. So, there's our 2-5-1. Let's bring the mic back over. So, okay, there's our 2-5-1. So if I was to, on chord 2, I would then take this A flat pentatonic scale. And then on the G7 scale, see how that works? That's just adding just an extra little bit of spice to that D minor 7 by using those notes that don't actually belong. Because we're basically putting an A flat and a B flat and an E flat on top of a D minor chord. They shouldn't technically fit, but they do. Especially if you use that G7 scale on the G7 chord going back to C. So I hope that those ideas are useful to you. Borrow them, use them, especially the using chords from A flat in the key of C. Hopefully that helps you, because that just provides you with a nice little bit of extra. It's chromatic harmony, but it's color. It's colorful chromatic harmony. It's not like really jazzy. Certainly doesn't have to be jazz orientated at all. You could do this really quite straight. You could keep your chords really straight. And it would still work, It still works, even when you do everything as triads. So, even if the style of music you're working in is not, jazz orientated at all, then certainly you can make it work. Just with triads rather than, kind of like the extra notes that I was using. All right, has anyone got any other questions? Because otherwise this is going to be a short show, and people seem to be running away. We're down to 10 people watching from about 15, which is actually a little bit low on numbers anyway. Normally we get probably about 20 or 25 in. So we're a little bit low on numbers. Okay. I'm just going back through the chat to see if I've missed anything, and I'm not really seeing anything. So I'm going to go and check in email and see if anybody has sent me an email, which they have not. So there's that. So I will grab a link to the video that I was telling you about. And it's very well worth checking out because they actually demonstrate a few different variations on what I talked about. All right, so people are multitasking. Okay, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So if we don't have any more questions, then we'll have to end the show because that's kind of what this show is all about. This show is kind of all about your questions. And I've done a couple of demonstrations for you there as well. So I hope that particularly the harmony one helps you and is just a nice little addition to your toolbox. And you can think of other key centers to try it out on as well. So I've just done that on A flat major in the context of the key of C, but you can try different ones. Okay, what's this that Ron says here? Maybe a show about 2 chords that are interesting. I think every chord is interesting. But, I mean, this is meant to be Songwriting Simplified. But I could talk about a very, very interesting concept, which I think I've briefly talked about, but it is a crazy, crazy advanced thing. But it's also worth you kind of pursuing, when I talked about tone rows, and, using the chromatic scale and, no note has any relationship to any other. But there is this thing, it's a little bit of a mouthful of a descriptor, but it's called hexachordal combinatoriality. I know, that is a massive musicological mouthful. What does it mean? Hexachord. What's a hexachord? 6 notes. Half a scale. Pretty much. If you were to kind of take half of one scale and then you combine that with the half of another scale. So for example, let's take the C major scale. So let's take that first half of the scale. And then let's say we take the first half of the A flat major scale, and we kind of sellotape those together. Kind of adds a little bit of extra color. But I'm missing out the D flat and the E flat. Okay, so let's add those in as well. And now suddenly we've got a really, really interesting scale. It's kind of partly chromatic and also partly just regular, straightforward, ordinary major scale. So the idea of that is you're taking the scale from one key and part of the scale of one key and part of the scale of another, and you put them together. So you're combining 2 different parts of a scale. So you can take an upper hexachord and a lower hexachord and put them together, or 2 upper hexachords or 2 lower hexachords and put them together from different keys. So half a scale, I just used the black keys. Well, if you did that, you know what you'd end up with? You end up with the whole tone scale, which is another very, very useful scale to have in your toolkit, especially if you want to suggest something that is just a little bit dreamy, So you can kind of, play that whole tone scale. and make a really interesting little melody out of that. Now, the cool thing is you can combine straight diatonic chords with the whole tone scale, and it sounds cool. So, for example, you can take... That's just a regular C major chord with the whole tone scale starting on C kind of on top of it. You could do the same with G. Sounds a little bit more weird. So you could maybe then move the whole tone scale so it starts on G. And that kind of spells out this kind of chord. It suggests it anyway. But, you know, you can do that on a straight major chord. So that actually works quite well. Ron says the chord 1 to 4 minor. Yeah, we have actually talked about that quite a bit on, I think, on a previous show. But yes, I think I will do a show where I kind of talk about different chord changes, familiar chord changes, and kind of emotions that they might invoke. Let's see. Rich says, folks on Studio One Plus can grab my new sound set from me here if they wish. Rich has a whole slew of awesome sound sets, which I highly recommend. If you're a member of Studio One Plus, go get them. Just get them. Don't even think about it. Don't even hesitate for a moment. Just go straight to Rich, the link to Rich's exchange, and just go download his stuff. It will do you good because there is really, really good stuff there. And Rich puts an awful lot of effort, an awful lot of work, an awful lot of time into creating these things, and he gives them away for free, which is phenomenally generous. So I mean, you know, he really does seek to bless our Studio One community with all of that. So just don't even think about it. Just go get it. Just go get it after this show. Click. Tell you what, bookmark that link. If you remember Studio One Plus, bookmark that link, and then right after this show, just go and start downloading his stuff, because you won't regret it. If there is a Zoom, I'll be late to our TV show tonight. Okay, yes. I don't believe there is a Studio One meetup tonight. I don't think there's one until next week, I think. Let's see. Yeah, Rich says you can thank me by liking this show. Absolutely. Please do. We've actually got more likes than viewers right now. That's mental. We don't often get that. That's for sure. Let's see. Yeah, tomorrow's the Ohio meetup. Oh yes, I know what I need to talk about. I nearly forgot to talk about this. So, yeah. So just so that you guys are aware, I'm giving the people that are here right now the heads up. There will be no Sunday Night Live this Sunday. I am not going to be here. I am going to be a little bit further south of where I am just now, close to the borders. Not quite crossing over the border into England, but we'll be maybe about half an hour's drive away from the border. So I'll be safe, which is good. You know, I don't like to necessarily always cross over into England. I'm kidding. It's fine. Don't have an issue with it. But yes, I'm going to be down there for the weekend, and I will be back on Tuesday. So there will be another Songwriting Simplified show on Wednesday. So no Sunday Night Live this Sunday. So what we will do for the Songwriting Simplified next week is we will kind of split it half and half. So I will allow, I don't normally do this, but I will allow Studio One questions. If you've got Studio One questions, we can do a little bit of Songwriting Simplified, and we can also do some Studio One questions as well on that Wednesday. So we'll split the show kind of in half. The other thing I need to let you know about is I am working with Joe Gilder to get him on Songwriting Simplified. We are looking at probably in about 4 weeks' time that I'm going to be able to get him on here as a guest. So as soon as I've got a firmed up date with Joe, then we will confirm it, and we will start advertising it, and we'll try and get it as many of you aware as possible that we're going to have Joe on the show. So as soon as I've got that, I will let you all know. I will make a community post about that. That's going to be very, very cool. I'm really looking forward to having Joe on the show. I've known Joe for pretty much the better part of 12 years. I knew him just as I was switching over to Studio One from Cubase. And kind of a combination of Joe Gilder and Jonny Geib were kind of very, very helpful in getting me started in Studio One, having come over from Cubase. So that's how I got to know those guys. And yeah, like I said, I've known Joe for a good wee while. And of course, we are PreSonus colleagues, which is really, really cool. Never saw that one coming, but it's really, really great that we are actual PreSonus colleagues working for the same company together. So yeah, so I'm working on that. I'm also working on some challenges, and just so that you know, there will be some major challenges that are going to be coming up. So we will have the Halloween challenge again this November. And I'm thinking of another cool way that we can do that, and a cool little device that you guys will be able to get your teeth into, that I will very carefully, as we lead up into November, I will talk plenty about the technique and the scale and all of that that you're gonna use to create your piece, so that you are familiar with the scale. You know how to play it on a keyboard, you know how to play it on a guitar, you know what it sounds like, and you know how to develop some chords from that mode. It's going to be modal again. So I'm really looking forward to that in November, and then there will be another Christmas songwriting challenge as well, and I know that's kind of a way down the line. But I also wanted to give you some more kind of long-term heads up. 2025 is going to be an awesome, amazing year for me personally, and also for this channel. I know we're kind of like halfway through this year almost, but yeah, 2025 is going to be spectacular. It is going to be my 50th birthday in 2025. So in 2025, we are going to go freaking nuts, and we're going to pretty much have a lot of cool celebratory things going on leading up to my birthday itself, which is on October 9th, by the way. So I'm 49 coming up for in a few months' time. And then next year, it's going to be my 50th birthday year. So we're going to do some cool things leading up to that as well. So I wanted to give you guys the heads up, because it's going to be outstanding. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, because you don't want to miss a thing over the next 18 months, because I have some very, very cool videos coming, and we've got more challenges, and there may be some prizes, there may be some giveaways. I might just give some SHIT away, okay? So it's going to be good. So Neil says, yesterday I finally did offline updates of Windows 10, Universal Control, IO Station firmware, and Studio One. Studio One knows it's activated on the machine. It's so easy. There you go, Neil. Fantastic. Awesome. I am very, very excited for you there. That you've managed to get everything set up and organized offline. That's very cool. Well done. Because it is super duper easy, but you have to kind of have your wits about you about how you do it, especially the offline activation for Studio One. There is definitely a process that you have to go through, and it's dead easy to do it correctly, but it's also maybe equally easy to not do it correctly, and you end up either not getting the code that you need to activate, and so it can kind of get a little bit messy quite quickly. But it sounds to me like you've just like totally nailed it, so that's cool. Brett says he's staring down the half-century mark this year. Cool. So yeah, so you're only a wee bit ahead of me. All right, so we got 10 minutes left, guys. If you've got any more questions, I will answer them. If not, we will just end it here. I don't know if there's going to be an after show or not. One thing I'm going to tell you is it's incredibly hot and humid in here. I do have a fan that's set up over here, but one of the things I worked out in testing before I did the show, I can't have the fan on because there's two things that happen. Number one, the mic picks up the fan. Number two, the air from the fan blows right across the microphone and you can't hear me talking. So, and the expander doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know what it's supposed to be paying attention to and what it's supposed to be kind of cutting down. So it's incredibly hot in here, and already humidity outside is like 96%. So it's very warm, it's very humid, and in here the outside ambient temperature is like 14 degrees Celsius, and in here it's about 27 degrees Celsius. So yes, it's hot. But yes, throughout the day today I've had the fan on pretty much full blast to keep me cool, and I have drunk not one, not two, but 3 cans of Diet Coke because it's the only thing I could get my hands on in the house at the moment. Ron says you need a plug-in to fix that. Yes, it's called an expander, but the expander is just like getting super duper confused. Bobby Bear says I'm way past the century. You're way past the century mark. Really? I didn't think you were over 100. If that's the case, damn, you look good for somebody being over 100 years old. Wow, awesome. Neil says I did not even need the license key for updating, I guess, the key sticks with the machine, and the installer looks for it and sees it, no messing with the key transferring. Yes, if you're just updating, you're quite correct. But if once you've activated Studio One on a computer, it stays. It stays activated until you delete the license file. So, for example, let's say, I mean, this does happen, but it doesn't always. Let's say you do a completely fresh install of your operating system. Like you completely wipe your computer and you do a fresh install. That license file for Studio One is going to get nuked as well, right? So everything gets blown away, including the license file. Then you would have to do the full offline activation. That's basically the only way that would work. But if if you've already activated Studio One on that computer and there is a license file on the computer, then even if you just update Studio One to the current version 6.6.1, it's fine. It sees the license file and you're good to go. So yeah, but the key thing for you, and actually what makes it easy for you, is when you're doing an update, because you're not downloading it direct to that computer, you're downloading it to another computer that's online. all you're doing is downloading the installer, and then you put that on like a little flash drive, a little thumb drive, and then you put that into the offline computer, and then you just run the installer on the offline computer, and that installs the update for Studio One. And of course, as you said, it sees the license file. It's good to go. And the same would be the case for Universal Control and the firmware for the I/O station. You just download those files, and then you just run them off of a flash drive, and you're good to go. So if you keep your computer offline, and I know a lot of people that do, I don't, because I need to be online so that I can do this show, for example, and I need to be online for doing my job as well, because I work remotely. I'm not based in the Baton Rouge office or in the County Cavan, Ireland office. This is the Scotland office for Presonus. So yes, I am online, but we do use a VPN. So I'm pretty protected. I'm not using a VPN right now because I can't use a VPN when I'm streaming. It won't work. Anyway, I think we will call it there because I don't see anything else in the chat. So thanks very much, everybody, for your questions and your comments, and for allowing me to kind of indulge myself in that. I call that median substitution, by the way. It's kind of median. It's not median. Median would be from the major third, but to me, it's like the median below. It's like the major third below. So I'm in the key of C major, but I'm borrowing chords from A flat, which, by the way, is another little John Williams device. To go. That's another little device of his. Okay, Billy has posted an after show thing. So Bobby Booth says, that's what I feel like, but I'm really over half a century. Okay, there we go. I was going to say, damn, you look good for 100 and whatever year old. All right, folks, I will see you next week, next Wednesday. No show Sunday because I'm away. I may well post like a wee short or something just to say hello on Sunday, but that's all I'm going to do. That's all you'll find. So be subscribed if you want to watch that, but otherwise, that's it, and I will see you back here for Songwriting Simplified on Wednesday. So you got a whole week to come up with a whole bunch of new questions. So be making music, be trying out these harmonic tricks that I give you guys, and tell me next week how it's gone, what you thought. Have you incorporated the ideas into a new song, or have you tried it out in some other way? How did you get on? Please do bring all of that, all your stories, all your information. And if you've got further questions about borrowing chords from other keys, I'm happy to discuss it further. So we could do that next week if you want to. But if you've got other questions about songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory, then please be thinking about those over the course of the next few days, and we will talk about them then. So thank you very much, everybody. Good night, and I will see you on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.